Hi, Paul. It's lovely to have you here. How are you? Had said that leadership isn't just a title, it's how you show up every day. But the constant pressure, endless demands, and weight of responsibility can leave you feeling disconnected from what truly matters. You might find yourself barely keeping up, questioning whether you're leading the way you truly want to. That's where Paul Haynes comes in to break you free from the burnout and regain control. With over 15 years of experience as an ICF PCC certified coach, he specializes in guiding senior leaders through tough challenges. Career has been all about leadership transformation and executive roles. Was there a moment early on that made you realize that this is the path I really want to take?
I know you've asked me one question. I'll answer two if I may.
Yes, of
Because there was a moment which I'll speak to that led me into coaching, but it was quite circumstantial. There was a moment in time, there was an opportunity, and indeed maybe some luck. But then there's also the question of how come I became the coach I am today. So I'll answer both if I may. But I guess the key moment was about 15 years ago or so, maybe just over, when I was rising through the ranks, and therefore the people who I was supporting, the leaders around me, the executives around me, their positions were becoming more and more senior. Therefore, they were managing more people, and therefore the problems that they were encountering were getting larger and larger and more severe, such as teams who were taking industrial action, for example, and striking from the organization because trust had broken down. And all of a sudden, the requests I was getting were things like, well, Paul, how do I re-engender trust for a workforce of 500 people? This was about 15 years ago. And I was like, I don't know. I don't have the magic answer to that. If I did, I would go and save the world, make the world a nicer, better place. I don't have it. So just naturally, I found myself starting to coach more, because I was able to say, look, such an answer just can't possibly exist. You are dealing with real people. We need to find a way to get to the heart of what's truly happened that's broken the trust, or whatever the challenge was at the time, and start to work at that level. So even without any kind of formal training in coaching at that point, I was naturally going to a deeper surface level than just trying to fix the symptom, if you like. I was really trying to go to the cause. And then I realized I'd got a talent for it, and there was a lot of feedback that said you should go for this, and so began my kind of professional journey to study and practice, and that's never stopped for the last 15 years, nor do I think it will ever, quite honestly. But I'm going to sneak in that bonus question, if I may. But why did I become the coach I am today? And well, just hearing you with that introduction of me, and that was super kind, thank you. I mean, even just listening to those words, which are words really familiar to me, I felt really kind of heavy, because the people I'm helping are in such challenging times. They are being asked to do so much more than they've ever done, with so much less than they've ever had, in a world that is changing and becoming so diverse and divisive. And below it all are things like anxiety and fear and panic and shame and vulnerability. And we're just not able to talk about any of this. We're not able to be held emotionally, and yet we're expected to go and perform. Well, you can't do that when you've got all of this going on below the surface. And I'm speaking of myself from many years ago now. The work I did on myself was transforming those levels of fear and panic and anxiety. And that's really why I've built not only my practice, but a practice that kind of incorporates my own journey, and now enables me to help people do what I've done for myself, but not taking 15 years, right? Taking a few months and so on and so forth. Those were the key moments, my life journey, and then that moment 15 years ago where I thought, oh, I'm pretty good at this. I should make this my career.
I'm sure you encounter areas where many leaders get stuck in patterns that hold them back. So what's been a common blind spot that you've seen, and how have you helped them break through it?
Especially now, where are we, March 2025, more so than ever, the blind spot that I'm seeing almost everywhere and helping people with is the drive to do, to go, do, task, and it's action focus, and I could keep going with words. the blind spot is that it's not sustainable. We are not robots, and even if we were, robots run out of batteries. They need maintenance, But even if we were, well, we're not. That's the point. We're real human beings. We are not designed to be constantly up here in our heads, continually gripped by the tension that comes from having to do and perform all of the time. Some people thrive really well under pressure. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the blind spot being, you can do, task until the day that it is our final day, right, on this planet. But you never really then come into contact with what is going on below the surface for you. And I'm talking about those moments of worry and fear and panic and shame and doubt and vulnerability. If we're always just doing and always going at task and going from the next Zoom to the next Zoom or the next crisis or whatever it is, we never really stop to pause and realize how we're living our life, ever. And sometimes the blind spot isn't even that blind for people that I support. They know that there's a wealth of things below the surface, and that to touch into them could feel really difficult, really quite challenging to touch into how they've truly been feeling all of this time. So that's why you need somebody to hold you in that space and help you, guide you gently, bit by bit, be able to go into that space. But sometimes I'm most generally actually now I'm working with people where it's become so big a task to actually look at how they're feeling that we'll just go and 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 go. The risk is, and the blind spot is, there will be one day for all of us, whether it's now or in the future, where we look back and we say, I had some time, and what did I do with it? And did I spend it in a way that was meaningful to me and purposeful? Or did I lurch from one crisis to the next, to the next, to the next, because I never really wanted to face into the fact that I'm unhappy, or I'm scared, or I'm sad. It's so common now, especially with how fast the world is and how we never need to think of any. I could grab my phone now and just start scrolling through YouTube and Facebook and so many apps. There's so many things that mean we never really need to stop and ask ourselves, am I happy?
You're right. I mean, with everything changing and evolving, and AI being a very big part of our life, and how traditional workforce has become shifted to hybrid mode. There's so much happening around the world. So how do you see the leadership roles changing in itself in the next few decades, or like any kind of change that's going to happen in the next few decades?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, no crystal ball. Who knows what 6 months down the line, let alone 10 years. That's kind of the point, right? The world is changing at such an unbelievable pace now. I was listening to an interview quite recently with what's the word? Futurologist, I think it's the word, a futurologist. And the interviewer asked the futurologist, what's going to be the most important skill as we move into this heightened technological age? And the answer gave me a lot of hope because it's directly related to me, but also surprised me. The answer was empathy. There will need to be empathy. And it really hit home. And I think this is key to your question of how do I see at least leadership needing to form this year, let alone 10 years time, but this year, is leaders who have come out of that grip that I've just been describing of do, go, task, and have actually done the work themselves to be able to notice how they're feeling and to be able to become more accustomed to sitting with their own worries and fears and anxieties, so that they can hold space for their team and team members and stakeholders to do exactly the same, so that we come away from a boardroom that is purely focused on agenda and task A and task B, And actually a leader can hold enough emotional space to really be able to sense into how their team are feeling about projects, about initiatives. And for that leader not to want to close it down or fix something because it feels too uncomfortable. They've done enough of their inner work to hold it and say to their team, I can feel the tension in this room. I can feel the fear about project X, whatever it is, proposal, whatever. Let's talk about that. That's where I see leadership needing to go, because we are all finding ourselves in a world that has changed. And I'm not just talking about technology, I'm talking about views across the board and politics and the way we approach social media. And if you didn't grow up in that world, I was kind of on the cusp. I kind of grew up as technology was coming in. But if you grew up where that wasn't part of your world, I really have compassion for how it must feel now. And those are the people in our teams. We need to hold compassion. That's where I really honestly truly believe leadership must go now.
Coaching has been something that you've been part of for 15 years or something, but what is, like, there's always this misconception about coaching. What do you think is the biggest misconception about coaching, and how do you make sure coaching just isn't for good advice but truly transformative to a person?
Okay, I'll answer the misconception question first. Advice in coaching is interesting and quite a hot topic, but I will do my best with that one as well. Misconception. That you can define coaching in a box, i.e., this is exactly what coaching is, I think is a major misconception. So I guess I'm speaking now to anybody listening that might be looking for a coach. And my advice, let me give some advice, is speak to a range of coaches and really find out what their coaching is all about. Because it's a risk to, and a misconception to think that all coaches are the same. If you ask 100 coaches about their coaching practices, you are probably going to get 100 or close to it different answers. A misconception that I get, that I help dispel when I work with new people, is that I'm going to lead people through a program, if you like, in inverted commas. So I'm going to say to you, right, and in month 2 we will do this, and in month 3 we will do this, and by month 4 this will happen. Well, I come back to what I said to you about 5 minutes ago. I have no crystal ball. I can't see the future. My work is about a transformation of life, a transformation of a way of being. And it sounds quite existentially, and it is existential, but it's very rooted in professional goals. It's very rooted in, I hear what you need to achieve to delegate or to create more work-life balance or to raise your confidence when you're dealing with board members, etc. But my work focuses on the deep, emotionally reactive patterns that we've carried probably for most of our entire life, and starting to touch into them very gently with care and very gently, bit by bit, to transform them so that we can grow our confidence across our whole life, not just in the boardroom. Now, that work sometimes happens in one session because it's deeply transformative. Sometimes happens across several sessions. But a misconception for me is, Paul, tell me exactly what we're going to do and tell me exactly where I'm going to be in 3 months' time. Coaching, like any other invitation to personal development, is an invitation to say, are you up for the start of lifelong work? Not lifelong with me, but I'll join you for a very short time on your journey, and then I will wish you well as you go forwards. But it's an invitation to open yourself up to wanting to be something more than you are and to continue that journey. The misconception is the belief and the fallacy that you do all that by way of a set product. Step 1, step 2, step 3, and you've transformed your entire life. That would be the misconception that I hear.
Well, I have one very interesting question for you.
Okay.
If you could share the story about a client who fully embraced your work and the way you went about things and, elevated it beyond, the initial expectations, and how witnessing them in their full potential impacted you. I mean, your success story in a certain way.
Yeah, I have one right away, and I noticed some sadness comes up. It's a wonderful story. It does come with a little bit of happy sadness. Um, it's interesting because I'm going to share with you how they changed their life, and an outsider would see the outcome. The outcome was they returned to work. That's the outcome. They after some time away from work, they returned, and they created some daily routine in their life. Outside in, you'd be forgiven for saying, okay, that's pretty low level. I'll be very careful with how I phrase and how I share this. And to anybody listening, this is to do with bereavement, family bereavement. So just conscious, if that's a space you don't wish to go into right now, then maybe press pause for now. So I worked with somebody that had to stop their career because they very unexpectedly lost a parent in their adult life, and it had completely shattered their world and shattered their reality to the point where they weren't really able to function, even as much as having some hope and some joy and some dreams in their life. Even something like being able to see a week in advance and planning something in the diary that was restorative or sociable. You know, their entire world had crumbled. And I remember getting the first email through my website. And again, I'm not going to break any confidence here, so I'll paraphrase. But I remember the first email began with words like, it's taken me a month to be able to say hi to you. And then there was more to the email, laying out what had happened and might I be able to help. But just that first bit, you know, you think, my gosh, how hard was that for you to take that step? So much care needed in this coaching, and we took it very slowly. We did it across a year. I usually work around 6 months. We did it across a year, and bit by bit, together, we were exploring and discovering the way to start putting some of the pieces back together. And I'm probably going to leave it there with the detail because it gets quite deep and it gets quite personal. But this is about them. Bless you, and thank you for saying it's my success story. But they fully embraced the invitation to ever so gently touch into what was happening for them inside. They got to a stage where, quite rightly so, they just had to block and numb and freeze everything because it was too painful. But the unfortunate side effect of that meant that they pressed pause on their life. And bit by bit, every single time we got together, they'd really embraced the approach and the self-care behind it, and the ability to start regulating the nervous system once again. And bit by bit, we gently came into contact with what they were feeling and let some of that start moving through the body. And as it did each time, they just became a little bit more light, a little bit more spacious, a little more able to really feel what was going on. And I'll kind of cut forward a year later to recreating their life, including going back to work, having friends, having things in the diary. And I'm quite sad in a happy way just when I remember that person. This was a few years ago now, and they have a special place in my heart.
If this is the last question, if you don't mind answering a few more for us.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
More companies are realizing the power of coaching, but most don't know where to really begin with it. So if a leader wants to build a strong coaching culture in their organization, what are the first few steps they should take?
This is what I've seen so many times over the years about how organizations or teams or leaders will try and bring in coaching and build a practice, and it doesn't work. And the reason is, to come back, I know I'm like a broken record, but this is my thing. The task, do, action, is let's just get somebody in. they'll do an intervention and that will fix, in inverted commas, that will fix everything. And of course it doesn't. And of course it doesn't. It leaves us no time to really understand at the deepest level what's truly going on and work at that level. Where I see this being done really well is when the leader is truly invested in coaching. So they're not trying to bring it in as a quick win. They want to develop it as something that's really transforms the business, the people that work within it, the results, the relationships, etc. So I would suggest it starts with the leader. And for the leader to really want to step into that space of coaching, of being coaching, and for them to do a body of work around that first, because then what quite naturally happens in my experience is the people around them, their team members, see the shifts, see the changes they're making. You know, the person, the leader being coached is just naturally role modeling the positive impacts of coaching, because they are changing their behaviors or the way they go about their work, whatever it is. What's even better is if the leader is quite public about it. Say, I'm working with Paul at the moment, I'm having some coaching, we're working on my ability to, whatever, delegate, have difficult conversations, work-life balance, whatever it is. And the team are seeing these changes live and in the moment. And then that creates a ripple effect of its own and some interest. Hey, you've been getting coaching. How do I get some coaching? You know, how come you get it all? I want some. But it's investment. Coaching is not a quick fix. I'm not saying we can't do one-off sessions. That's not what I'm talking about. Of course we can. I do crisis coaching. So I work with somebody for 45 minutes only, never see them again. And in that moment, we work on a crisis. But if we're talking about embedding in an organization, then there has to be motivation and investment in it. And really that needs to start from the leader.
Yeah, actually true. Yeah, it needs to come from the leader itself. So do you think if the leader takes up coaching in the start and understands it, it'll be better for the organization to adapt it later?
Yeah, and also to let me find my words. There's a lot of resistance to coaching, quite rightly so, I would say, when it's elected on your behalf. Hey, great news! I found you a coach. Well, hang on, what's that? Are they going to psychoanalyze me? Are they going to make me talk about my childhood? No, incidentally, to both of those things. But people have fears and worries and vulnerabilities about being that open and that vulnerable with somebody else, and quite rightly so. Quite rightly so. The desire to be coached has to come from the person. You cannot be coached if you don't want to be coached. It is as simple as that, nor should you be. I've got no right to try and coach somebody that doesn't want to be coached. So really what I see with the leader embodying it and demonstrating it is so many things of it's firstly, it's okay. Firstly, it's okay to be coached. And secondly, nothing bad is going to happen because of it. So it's opening up the shutters a little bit and the motivation.
Have any advice or something to tell the audiences in the end? What would it be? That's my last question to you.
Ooh, just generally speaking.
Just generally speaking.
Generally speaking. Okay, so it's advice I heard from a CEO about 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add my own spin on it. The advice from him was, when an opportunity comes, just say yes. Just say yes. My spin on it is, take a breath first, breathe, relax, come out of the brain and really check in with how you're feeling, because your body will tell you. If you really listen to it, your body will tell you if it's a yes or if it's a no when opportunity comes. Listen to your body is my advice.
Okay, listen to your body. I don't think people really take that seriously, because in their mind, the mind is working, because they're like.
So I don't coach up here, because it just goes round and round and round and round and round. But that's another conversation.
That's another
but I'm with you. It's coaching below the neck, in the body, and all the wisdom that we have there.
Oh, wow. I think
That's another conversation.
that is another conversation. All right, Paul, thank you so much for this. It was
Yeah,
really,
thank you
really
too.
lovely talking to you.